The Ottomans were known for their military prowess. So let's see how they built their army. In today's episode, we'll look at the Ottoman Empire from 1477 to 1566, starting with Mehmed the Conqueror's immediate aftermath, and ending with Suleiman the Magnificent's death. This period covers the last two post-conquest campaigns and the first four sultans of the early empire before its decline. Why 1566? Because 1566 marks the death of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, arguably the peak of Ottoman power, politically, militarily, and culturally. It's also a clean narrative arc from the post-conquest expansion to imperial zenith. We can divide this period into three distinct phases of territorial consolidation: territorial expansion and territorial maintenance. Let's get started. First up, we have Mehmed II in the year 1477. Constantinople has just fallen. Europe is reeling. And Mehmed is looking to capitalize on his momentum by going after the remnants of the Byzantine army and securing his hold on the Balkans. He does both of these things in this campaign. First, he defeated a Byzantine-Hungarian relief force at the Battle of Oradia in late 1477. Then, in 1479, he campaigned into the Balkans and crushed any remaining hopes of Byzantine revival. In 1480, he was able to take Belgrade, and then he headed home. With that, the Balkans are now fully secured. Mehmed spent the rest of his reign consolidating the gains in Anatolia, conquering the remaining Turkish principalities there. When he died in 1481, he left behind a stable, albeit insecure empire, and passed the mantle to his son, Bayezid II. But while the Balkans and Anatolia were secured, the eastern Mediterranean and the Caucasus remained problematic. There were constant raids and rebellions and incursions, which Bayezid set out to correct. Now, Bayezid II's reign is pretty significant because it marks the beginning of the decentralization of the Ottoman state. Instead of the tight central control of the early conquests, we start seeing provincial governors become more independent. And that's because Bayezid made a blunder when delegating power. He appointed his sons as governors over key provinces, a decision that would come back to haunt him. See, Bayezid had three legitimate sons, all of whom wanted to be sultan. And so the brothers got into a massive conflict. This war was called the Interregnum War, and it lasted for 9 years, from 1494 to 1502. And during this time, the Ottoman armies began to adopt gunpowder weapons like cannons and muskets. By the end of the war, Selim, the eldest son, emerged victorious, and he wasted no time in taking out his siblings before he turned on his father. And in 1512, Bayezid II died, and Selim ascended to the throne as Selim the Grim. Selim's first order of business was to finish the conquest of the Middle East by defeating the Safavids. While the Ottomans had been fighting the Safavids since 1502, the two sides did unofficially clash until the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514. What made this battle important was the fact that the Ottomans decisively defeated the Safavids, who were a Shiite Muslim power. You see, the Safavids tried to rally the Turkic and Persian tribes against the Sunni Ottomans, but the Ottomans prevailed thanks to better organization, tactics, and artillery. With the Safavid threat neutralized, Selim moved west to conquer the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt in 1516. He did this by marching through Syria, which was an Ottoman province at the time, and he stormed Cairo in 1517. Thus, the Mamluk Sultanate ended, and Egypt became an Ottoman province. On top of that, Selim proclaimed himself the new caliph, uniting the religious and political authority of the Muslims under one head. In doing so, he cut the last ties between the Ottomans and the House of Osman. With that, Selim set his sights on the heartland of Europe, launching a brutal campaign into Hungary in 1526. The result was catastrophic. The Battle of Mohacs saw the Ottomans smash the Hungarians and claim the country for themselves. From there, the Ottomans marched into Belgrade, and even laid siege to Vienna in 1529. And if not for heavy rains that ruined their gunpowder supply, Vienna could have fallen. But as it is, the Ottomans failed to capture the city and were forced to withdraw. And so the Ottoman Empire reached its greatest extent in Europe. Now, right after that, Selim died in 1520, and his son ascended to the throne as Suleiman the Magnificent. Suleiman would go on to rule for 46 years, longer than any other Ottoman sultan, except for the first sultan, Osman Bey. Under Suleiman, the Ottoman Empire reached its cultural and demographic peak, becoming a melting pot of cultures due to its extensive trade network. His reign marked a golden age of sorts for the Ottomans, comparable only to that of the Renaissance in Italy or the Elizabethan era in England. During this time, the Ottoman military grew to include non-Muslim subjects. For example, the Janissaries, the elite infantry unit, was entirely composed of Christian slaves. And as such, non-Muslims were given access to higher education and public office as long as they converted to Islam. To understand the longevity of Suleiman's reign, we have to remember that he inherited a stable, well-organized, and growing empire. While his predecessors were busy conquering, Suleiman inherited a bureaucracy that was capable of managing and expanding the empire without issue. His reign was mostly one of maintenance. In fact, the last time the Ottomans went on a full-scale invasion was in 1533 against the Safavids. But as we will see, this campaign doesn't really count. Suleiman's first major engagement came in 1533, when Shah Tahmasp of the Safavids invaded Ottoman Azerbaijan. Suleiman responded by dispatching his general Hayreddin Babarasa to deal with the situation. Barbarossa would go on to defeat the Safavids twice in 1534 and 1544, but those victories did little to stop Shah Tahmasp's advance into Ottoman territory. And by 1548, the Shah had pushed the Ottomans all the way back to the Halys River. And then something remarkable happened. Instead of continuing his advance, Tamim Pasha retreated. Some historians say he did so because he needed to put down a rebellion in Persia. Others say he realized the Ottomans were too powerful and decided to call it a draw. Whatever the reason, the Ottomans were able to keep their eastern borders secure for the rest of the century. The second conflict that marked Suleiman's reign was the Russo-Lithuanian invasion of Crimea. See, the Tatars of Crimea were raiding the northern shores of the Black Sea, attacking Russian and Lithuanian holdings there. So Grand Prince of Moscow, Vasily III, decided to lead a massive force into the region. In 1537, he captured Kaffa, but he soon found himself surrounded by Ottoman forces. His subsequent attempt to relieve the siege failed, and Russia lost around 15,000 men. That defeat scared them away from Crimean affairs for good. Finally, we have the Habsburg conflicts in the Balkans. In 1541, Ferdinand I of Habsburg seized Belgrade from the Ottomans, but he was driven out 3 years later. Then in 1552, Ferdinand launched another offensive into Hungary, this time capturing the city of Rhodes. Suleiman responded by besieging the city, but he was unsuccessful. And so he decided to try again in 1562. Again, the siege dragged on, and Suleiman returned home, disappointed. To add insult to injury, Ferdinand managed to capture Budapest. So in 1566, Suleiman led a third campaign into Hungary. This time he reached the gates of Vienna, but he died before he could take the city. So with that, the attempts at further European expansion ended. And so we have the golden age of the Ottomans lasting from 1477 to 1566, marking the zenith of the Ottoman Empire. This period covered the last two post-conquest campaigns and the first 5 sultans of the early empire before its decline.